First, I would like to welcome you to the homeland of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. My name is Eldon Yellowhorn. I'm the director of the Indigenous Research Institute, and this is our second in our speaker series for this spring. This has become our annual event of hosting a speaker series. If you're available next Tuesday or next Wednesday, please join us when Dr. George Nicholas will be talking about intellectual property and cultural heritage. However, tonight I have a panel discussion, Two-Spirit and Indigenous Trans Stories and Photos of Safety, Belonging and Wellbeing, Photovoice Research Project. But before we get started, I want to just we had a fifth person who was lined up with us, Cindy Holmes, who is a postdoctoral fellow in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Simon Fraser University. And unfortunately, she was involved in an accident yesterday. So we would just like to wish her a speedy recovery and wish her well as she gets well again. So tonight we are very grateful to have 4 panelists who will participate in the event. I will just introduce, and maybe you can raise your hand when I get your name. Bon Fabian is a co-researcher in this project. Elizabeth James. Oh, she's not here? Okay. Sandy Lambert. And Chase Willier. And Kyle Shaughnessy. So without further ado, I will turn it over to them.
Cool, thank you.
Hello. So I'm not Cindy. I was supposed to be Cindy, but I'm not Cindy. Surprise! So Cindy is fine. She's okay. She's a little shaken up. She had a big car accident yesterday and just decided that this was not the best thing for her to be taken on right now. So she just needs to do a little bit of self-care, and so I'm here to step in. And so I'm happy to facilitate for the next, I think, hour or so, and then we're going to do some Q&A. So again, my name is Kyle Shaughnessy, and I'll chat a little bit more about me in a second when we get to the bios. Also, this is a bit of a total surprise for me, so I may be reading off the paper a little bit more than I normally would. So, opening slide. Is this our opening slide? Yes, it is. So in our presentation, we're going to be discussing some emerging issues and new data from a community-based participatory research project about connections between safety, belonging, well-being, and place in the lives of trans, Two-Spirit, and gender non-conforming people in BC. The current research focuses on experiences on the unceded Coast Salish territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Solitude nations in the city of Vancouver. In this presentation, we're going to discuss emerging themes from Two-Spirit and Indigenous Transgender co-researchers. So we do have 4 presenters today, but there's many other co-researchers and community advisory members who collaborated with us, and also Dr. Marina Morrow from the Faculty of Health Sciences at SFU, who's Cindy's postdoctoral supervisor, will also be helping to moderate the Q&A session afterwards. So again, I'm Kyle. I go by he, his, and him. I'm on the advisory committee for the Photovoice project. So one of the reasons that I'm on the advisory is because I'm also the project manager for the Call Out Project, which is a queer, trans, and Two-Spirit wellness initiative through Vancouver Coastal Health at Transgender Health Information Program. A couple years ago, we ran a Photovoice project with youth across BC, identifying safer spaces in their communities. So this is sort of where my interest came from in this research. So I myself am trans. I'm also Métis, so I'm Dene, Irish, and Ukrainian, and I'm from Yellowknife. And also just to speak a little bit about Cindy, for those folks who don't know her, is that Cindy, and I may say I, but I actually mean Cindy. Okay. So Cindy is a Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research postdoctoral fellowship at Simon Fraser University in the Faculty of Health Sciences in the Center for Gender, Social Inequity, and Mental Health. This research is being conducted through the support of this postdoctoral fellowship. Cindy's interest in this research grows out of her background in community anti-violence counseling and advocacy for the queer and trans violence prevention for over 20 years, and she's also a cisgender white ally and loved one of a trans and two-spirit people. She brings her personal awareness of issues facing our communities with a commitment to creating meaningful research that is both accountable to trans and two-spirit communities. And I guess I'll also just hand it over to our co-researchers if they want to take a couple minutes to introduce themselves. So we'll start out with Bon.
Oh. Am I on? Hello? Oh, what a shock that was. Okay, I'm going to scare myself before I talk. It's not a good idea. I'm two-spirited. I come from Winnipeg, Manitoba. My name's Bon Fabian. I like to be called they, them, on occasion she, but you never know when that can happen. That happens by accident sometimes, but that's part of my two-spiritedness comes for me. I wanted to say my people are Blackfoot, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, French. That's all from my mother, and my father is Slovenian. I was born in Winnipeg, and that's it for now. You'll hear some more later. Okay.
Good evening. Hello? Oh, there we go. Good evening. My name is Sandy Lambert. I come from the Tall Cree First Nation in northern Alberta. I've been involved in the HIV movement for the past 10 years. Also, I'm a CRA, which is a Community Research Associate with the AHA Center. So, and I'm two-spirited, and I usually go by Mr. or he. Okay.
Evening, my name's Pansay. I'm Chase Willier from Sucker Creek First Nation, Saddle Lake on my mother's side, Saddle Lake First Nation, Cree Nation, both in Alberta. My Okanagan name is Nerkushtan, means bridge. I was raised in the Okanagan Nation, part of the Big Scoop, and I presently live in Vancouver, East Van. I go by the pronouns he and him.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. And also, because we're going to be seeing slides from another one of the co-researchers, I'll just read her bio as well. So Elizabeth Raven James is a Native American two-spirit post-operative transsexual who has worked with the Trans Pulse Project, Taking Care of Business, and the Sharp Access Project, and is a published author with Emerald Insight and the Canadian Scholars Press. She is a tough warrior who is a third-degree Midwin teacher. So we're just going to start off with a little bit of terminology so folks are feeling familiar with the context in which we're doing this work. So we'd like to go over a few definitions. And also the image on this slide and some of the upcoming slides are examples of some of the beautiful posters available from the Native Youth Sexual Health Network. And they were part of their anti-homophobia and transphobia Native Youth Photography Project. And they can also be found on their website. And they encourage others to download them and share them in your communities. Oh, I'm encouraging you to download these and share them in your communities. Like I said, total surprise. So Two-Spirit. So Two-Spirit is a term used by some North American Indigenous people to describe those with diverse gender identities, gender expressions, gender roles, and sexual orientations. Some may use pre-existing nation-specific terms in Indigenous languages and cultures that express an experience of gender outside of European concepts of sex and gender. We're also going to get a chance to go into a little bit more around what does Two-Spirit mean to you individually with some of the folks in the presentation. So the next one is trans. So trans is an umbrella term often used to describe people whose gender identity and or gender expression differs from what they were assigned at birth. And this includes diverse experiences and identities such as transgender, transsexual, Two-Spirit, FTM, MTF, gender variant, gender fluid, bigender, non-binary, non-gender, third gender, genderqueer. There's many terms that are going around out there, and so this is just an example of some of them. So next one is gender non-conforming. P.S. Has everyone seen these name tags? These are really awesome name tags. You can order these for your organization. They allow people to state both their name and their pronoun on their name tag, which is pretty rad. So this one is, gender nonconforming. So gender nonconforming is a term that refers to individuals who express their gender in ways that differ from societal expectations or stereotypes of the sex and gender assigned to them at birth. Okay. Well, I'm just going to read the next one out loud then. So LGBTQ is also a term that we should probably break down and define. So LGBTQ is a frequently used umbrella category to represent gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and queer people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. In some contexts, another T or a TS or a 2S is added to represent Two-Spirit. In our conversations in preparation for this presentation, we talked about some of the problems with simply adding Two-Spirit onto the umbrella category of LGBTQ. One of the effects is blurring the differences between gender identity and sexual orientation, and this really erases the specificities of power and privilege based on gender, race, and class and ability. So this quote from a well-known Indigenous scholar, Sarah Hunt, really reflects this concern. Simply adding Two-Spirit to the list of LGBTQ fails to fully account for the underlying systems of power and knowledge that continue to shape possibilities for solidarity between queer and Indigenous communities. For Two-Spirit people, addressing homophobia and transphobia is integrally connected to confronting broad systems of colonial power, which work to erase Indigenous ontologies of gender and sexuality.
So I get to speak about what Two-Spirit means to me, and it actually means quite a lot of traditions and history and experiences. Uniquely, as a Yakwe or Nekiao person, culturally, the roles that we held and practiced in our own cultures, and everyone had a different role and a place and a space, and that was respected. So for me, when I was growing up, when I was in my early 20s, I was adopted into the Okanagan Nation, and I had to come out to my elders. Near Christian, that's whose name I carry, Clint Douglas, he's passed since then, and I came out to my Okanagan mom and dad, and I was really kind of concerned, being lesbian at the time, and I was worried. But I had to come out, and I told my Okanagan parents, I was gay, I was lesbian, and my mother, Leslie, she just chuckled and laughed, no big surprise. And my father, Glenn, he's old-timey Indian. He was so old-timey that his elders actually remember prior to contact. So he told me a story about a woman war chief in the Colville Nations, which is still part of the Okanagan, or Elks Nation is a proper way to pronounce that. And once I was finished that, I felt really proud, I felt really good. And I knew that we all had our individual cultures and ways of knowing and places. And regardless of where we're from and which tribe, they're all kind of different. But that opened the arms for me to come in. And that's when I started my journey.
Oh, my experience, what Two-Spirit means to me, what could I say here? When I first came across the term Two-Spirit, I went to a Two-Spirit gathering in Eugene, Oregon in the 1986 or something like that. And I went there as a lesbian, and I didn't know I was Two-Spirit. And through that process, forward the years now I have a different meaning to Two-Spirit. I just used it as saying I'm a lesbian, this is great, I'm Two-Spirit. But fast forward, like many years later, I became part of a woman's Sun Dance in the United States. A Lakota woman put that on. And actually her book is coming out this spring, Beverly Little Thunder, and it explains a little bit more, even further, about Two-Spirit for her and what she created for us and the community. And for me today, what that means is it's even more richer today than it was in the 80s, because I didn't know what it all meant. And for me right now today, I feel like I walk as a Two-Spirit. As I've learned more about our history and colonialism, I didn't know that we were special people. It explains a lot of things. When I went to places, ceremonies were in the city here where they had 2 sweat lodges. A sweat lodge, they put a blue blanket on. This was at UBC. They had a lodge that put blue blankets, a lodge that had pink blankets, and I was helping them. And I was going to throw any blankets on. I went, oh no, you're supposed to do this. I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't like that. And then they also said that I had to wear a skirt in the sweat lodge. I didn't like that, and I did it, and I never went back to that ceremony again because of those things. Luckily today, fast forward all these years, people here in the Aboriginal community know me now further. I've been ceremony, and they know me as the Two-Spirit person. I can wear my pants now, and I won't go into the story how that evolved, but I feel proud of who I am, and they know who I am now. I even run lodges for the Two-Spirit youth at my lodge in North Vancouver, and it's open for all Two-Spirits. And I'm really proud of that. And it shows both sides of me, the male, the female, the energy, the yin, the yang. I present as male, and this is who I am. And I'm still unfolding that. That never changes as I get older. It gets more fuller, and also, it gets better, actually. But there's also a confusing time, too. Better in the confusion. You know what to do with it than before. But that's what Two-Spirit is to me today, anyway.
Sandy, do you want to share?
Yeah, I've been out in the community since I was about 16 years old, which was a long time ago. I identified as gay. About 12 years ago, I started to use the terminology as Two-Spirit. What it means to me, I'm still learning my culture. I like to work with our community. I like to help, because that's most of the work that I do in mostly the HIV world, as well as with Indigenous men. There's a project called the Dudes Club that I'm part of the research team. So it's basically just sharing our knowledge, our wisdom, and trying to work with our non-Indigenous brothers and sisters out there. So that's basically what it means to me.
Thank you. And I think also worth mentioning as well is something that we were even discussing in the room before we came out here, and I know I've had the opportunity to be discussing quite a lot this week, is the idea of reclaiming a Two-Spirit identity as an act of decolonization, because this was an identity that Two-Spirit people were wiped out from Indigenous communities as an act of colonization, either through violence or forced to go into hiding under threat of violence. And so even being able to gather and reclaim these identities is an act of decolonization. So just getting into a little bit about the purpose of the study. So this research is being developed and conducted in collaboration with trans, Two-Spirit, and gender non-conforming people to address community health concerns and strategies for action. So this study uses Photovoice, which is a participatory action research approach that combines photography, storytelling, and social action. It's guided by a commitment to undertake meaningful and accountable participatory research that respects the lived experiences of trans, Two-Spirit, and gender non-conforming people. The purpose of this study is to understand connections between violence, safety, mental health, and well-being, and belonging and place in the lives of trans, Two-Spirit, and gender non-conforming people. It highlights the resiliency and capacity of trans, Two-Spirit, and gender non-conforming people. And it nurtures community empowerment and strategies for action and social change. There was an initial community engagement phase in the establishment of a community advisory group, which is sort of what my role is here, that provided consultation and support in the design of the study and the recruitment plan for potential co-researchers. We used a purposive sampling technique. 21 people contacted Cindy over 3 weeks during June-July 2015. The initial group included 12 co-researchers, but one person withdrew after the first session due to unexpected work demands, reducing their availability and time. The co-researchers began meeting in the summer of 2015, and 11 of them are continuing to work together now. And we are currently involved in the participatory data analysis phase of the research, and are also beginning to share the results of the research in community. So we're using a community-based participatory action research methodology called Photovoice that combines photography, critical dialogue, reflection, storytelling, and social action. Participants are co-researchers. So what is Photovoice? So Photovoice is based on an understanding that people are the experts in their own lives. So co-researchers use cameras and take photos to capture images that express their environments and their experiences. They may write captions to describe a story or reflection about the photo, and then they share their photos and captions with others in a group. The group then decides how exactly they're going to be sharing their research for social change back with their community. And this is often done through a photo exhibit, as well as speaking opportunities such as this. And the following 4 goals are common in most Photovoice projects. 1, to enable people to record and reflect their community strengths and concerns. 2, to promote critical dialogue and knowledge about important issues through group discussion of photographs. 3, to to reach and influence policymakers, develop strategies for social action, and 4, to promote and support individual and community empowerment. So the framing questions, through this Photovoice process, co-researchers are invited to tell a story through photos and words that represents experiences and places of safety, well-being, and belonging in their lives, communities, and in different places. So framing questions provide the context for the exploration. They provide participants with a lens through which to examine their lived experiences. Cindy proposed a long list of questions based on consultations, community advisory group feedback, and existing research on the topic. The co-researchers could use some of these, none of these, or completely revise the questions altogether. So as you can see, the examples of the questions, they chose and created these framing questions. What makes a place feel safe and that I belong? What does well-being look like to me? What needs to change to create more safety, belonging, and well-being for trans, two-spirit, and gender non-conforming people in our community? For each question, we might also ask who, what, where, when, and how. For example, how do I feel safe and that I belong? Who makes a place feel safe and that I belong? And when do I feel safe and that I belong? And co-researchers could also choose to share images or reflections of places and experiences that represent the absence or lack of community safety, belonging, and well-being. So everyone also had a photo reflection worksheet that some people used, and it included questions like, I want to share this photo because, what is important for people to understand about this photo? What does this photo tell others about me or about my community? And so now we're getting a chance to share some of those photos. So our first co-researcher wasn't able to make it tonight, so Raven, I'm going to be standing in for Raven and reading her slides. So this slide is called Solitude and Pareidolia. This is a viewpoint of me laying down on the grass. Cirrus clouds. These are the clouds. You can see images in the clouds. The term for seeing images in the clouds is pareidolia. This is something I liked to do when I was a small child. At times, I lived in an abusive family. It was not a good home life. One way I could escape that was to look up at the sky, at the clouds. It was a free place of escape. There was no one, no place to go to get help in my situation when I did not feel safe. To look up at the clouds like this is grounding. Lying flat on the ground and looking up at the sky, I could contemplate different possibilities, just looking up at the sky. So this one is called Balance at the Edge of the Abyss. One of my using spots. It is a perfect spot. It is at Falls Creek Marina. It is isolated at times. There is a nook where you can use in peace and undisturbed. It is by the water. I would usually go out at night when there isn't anyone there. It's relaxing because you can hear the water lapping up against the shore. This one is called Getting a Second Chance, the Doctor's Recommendation. A positive picture. It is a shot of a methadone clinic, where I first cleaned up. Some of my friends suggested I should go on methadone. This is a clinic where I go for counseling and methadone, where I started on the road to recovery. It represents, I use the wall of the clinic to portray the hardness of addiction to contrast with the soft, brand new start of life, with the branches of the tree. New growth and new life on one side, and the hardness of addiction on the other side.
Oh, you got it up for me already. Holy smoke. Hello. I don't know, I think I might do it this way. This picture is the first one I took when we got the cameras. I brought it home, and the first thing I thought about, what kind of pictures am I going to take? I joined this photo journal, this Photovoice project. And what happened was, the first thing, the only thing I could think about that has hurt me for quite a few years is when people look at me sometimes. And I was wondering, how am I going to get a photograph of eyes? It's really hard. I'm going to get my partner or friend to do the up and down, like photograph your eyes up, your eyes down, sideways. Like, how was I going to capture that? So what I decided, I was at home, and what came to me was, it hits me in the gut. So I grabbed those chicken scissors out of the kitchen sink and pointed them to my belly and took a picture. And that's how it hurts when people look. And I'll write down what I wrote that day when we were in our group, what I said to this photograph. I had an incident at the care facility I worked at where everyone knows me, and from residents to their families and staff, they know me as I am, so I can pretty well be myself. I had been away for quite a while. There was this one time when some visitors were walking down the hallway towards me, and they gave me that look with their eyes. I call this one eye hurt. Sometimes when I get that look up and down, it gets me in the gut. That moment when I get their eyes going up and down my body as they walk past me. In my head, I think they don't know what gender I am, and this comes through. It comes through from their eyes and body language. Sometimes there is talk. I can hear what they are saying, but that energy is there. That's how I expressed with this photo. This time it hurts. Other times I don't even notice it. I'm oblivious to it. It depends on what I'm paying attention to. I notice it because I've always felt safe there 100% of the time at this job. And on that day, just for that brief second, it doesn't take long. It's just that look. And then from their eyes, and I was left with my feelings. It is their problem, not mine. I deserve to be here. It is all their problem. So that's how that picture came about. Okay, we were going down the road. I was on my way to a Two-Spirit journey in Batoche with my partner, and I had that lovely little camera. And we were at a gas station. I have some more photos, like we took 10 pictures, so there's going to be more to show later, but this was one of them. And it was like, oh my God, look at the truck. So I stood there, and Monica took pictures. And this is it, and where's this? What I said that day about this, and of course it's different again today, right? I called this one Take a Load Off. When I saw this, it was at a rural gas station, a trip to the Two-Spirit Gathering. As soon as I saw this truck, I was happy, and I want a picture with it. It was how I was feeling. I don't even know if I'm trans. I'm Two-Spirit. I'm mixed up in regards how trans fits with Two-Spirit. Well, take a load off your mind. When I feel good with who I am, it does take a load off my mind. I carry both male and female. I carry both. I'm gender fluid, and sometimes I wish I didn't have to define it. This is who I am. So it's like, sometimes it takes a load off your mind, sometimes it doesn't. So it's really good because it's a big truck, right? And what's even better yet, I love trucks and rigs. I do. That's one of my things besides chainsaws, but that's my latest toy, actually. The last one is And We Dance. This is really, really great because this is where I went. It was the 26th International Two-Spirit Gathering. And as I told you, the one part of my thing here that's where I found out about my two-spiritness was at that one of the gatherings, the first one it could have been in Eugene. And I went to this one in Saskatchewan. It was important because I'm from Manitoba and it was really close to Batoche and Duck Lake, and I never was there ever. So here we all were at this gathering. We got to be who we were and dance, and that's where I felt ultra safe. And these were some of my brothers, sisters, two spirits that were dancing. We have a little powwow we put on, so that's what we were doing. And what was really remarkable that happened there, that I'm there with all their two spirit friends and new people I haven't met. And the elders there, were around my age and older, they spotted me, and right away they wanted me part of their circle, and I was asked to help with some of the ceremonies that went on, and luckily, I carry my ceremonial stuff with me everywhere I go, and I'm still learning, and I have my pipe with me, and I was asked to use it, so I walk with these things, and I go, oh, and now I'm using them, and they're asking me, and I kind of go innocently, but carrying that knowledge, and it just happens, and it was really neat, because I found out how much I've grown from that first gathering, and to know this, you'll know this as your two-spirit evolving to identity, how that changes with time. But anyway, this was pretty great, and that's the safest place I felt, so.
So I'm just going to sit here because I'm older. This one, I was riding my bike to Stanley Park one day, and I was taking tons of pictures, and I just happened to look down and went, oh, Okay, that means something to me. So I call it roots and life. So what does well-being look to me? Roots in the ground connected to a tall tree with new growth sprouting the beginning of new life. We all come from a family tree with many family roots, especially our Two-Spirit First Nations roots, which are very deep and spread in many directions. The roots hold nutritional value. Roots are embedded very deep. Just like roots, Aboriginal people have been here for hundreds of years. This picture was difficult for me as a Two-Spirit man, First Nations man. I was part of the 60 Scoop in care all my life. And it's hard to understand the family trees and roots, but I know we all come from somewhere, something I like to understand more and to be connected. This photo tells others about me, my community, diversity of lived experiences such as transgender, transsexual, two-spirit, transition, gender variant, gender fluid, bigender, non-binary, non-gendered. We all come from somewhere, and then like a root, branched out into other areas. Thanks. So this one, I live close to Davian Butte, and I just happened to be walking home one night, and it's right at the corner. I call it color lights. Color lights and their interwoven twigs at Davian Butte. I want to share this photo because chromotherapy sets mood or state of mind. Color affects moods, feelings, emotions, healing properties for each color. For example, magenta strengthens contact with your life purpose and stimulates the adrenaline and heart activity. Scorpio, magnetism, speeds up things and gives extra power, great spiritual power, life purpose, and life path. The colors have strength, power, and represent the color of the rainbow. What does this photo tell others about me or my community? The community is colorful and made up of various gender, nationalities, personalities. It is a collaboration of human beings, but not always inclusive. Thanks. This one, again, I was riding my bike through Stanley Park, and it's like, okay, we're back to nature. A lot of it's a place where we come from, nature, being out in the wilds. And it's just a place for myself to have serenity after a stressful day or a week long of just talking. It's peaceful, and it's back to Mother Earth.
This is Lozen. She's Elks from West Bank First Nation. And this is at my extended family. Again, I was adopted into this Elks First Nation many years ago, but the Lindley family also adopted me, and they're from West Bank First Nation. And this is one of the family members taking at a name-giving ceremony on Cherryville. We call it Cherryville Res. It's part of the Okanagan Nation, which borders the Secwepemc Peoples Nation as well. But it's where the matriarch of the family grew up, and the families moved back from West Bank First Nation and settled back into Cherryville. And every August, it turns out they've been having a lot of babies in the family, so we have name-giving ceremonies, and this is where this is taken. And to me, this means so many things, but being, belonging, becoming is a term by an academic researcher by the name of David Newhouse on community development, but it speaks really well to this. For me, this is my extended family. They adopted me in as a young person, and it reminds me of health and happiness. Obviously, it's happy, but Lozen is a beautiful 7-year-old little girl, and she loves to practice her culture, and she loves to play. She's learning her language as her family is. Her mom speaks fluent Okanagan or Tsi'aks. And at the time when they chose her name, they didn't know that when they were looking for a really strong name, and they found her father, Lonnie, named her after a fierce warrior who fought alongside Geronimo, who's an Apache warrior known as Lozin. And during the research, just recently, that a friend of ours, Harlan Pruden, revealed that Lozin is actually a two-spirit individual. So it probably explains why I love her so much. But this is so many things. But health and wellness was kind of the objective of this Photovoice project. So I think that speaks really clearly. Health, wellness, balance, belonging. And the next slide. Is it down? This one. Yeah. And I don't really like taking pictures of myself, but when we started this project, it happened at a pretty monumental time of my life in the birth of my first child. And this picture was taken of me in Pomegranate's offices doing my appointments, regular appointments before the birth of my first child. I'd be lying if I didn't say that I didn't have conflicting emotions around my child's impending birth. This picture was taken at the Pomegranate midwife's office, and I was feeling very unsure of myself in so many ways about becoming a parent, whether I was going to measure up for the big day and every day after that for the rest of my child's life. Everything felt uncertain, and I knew there wasn't any roadmaps. If I were a straight man, of course there's a script for that. But I felt overwhelmed at times. I was 17 months into my own transition by the time my child would be born. What would her world be like with me as her father? I felt a river of uncertainty underneath all the anticipation. My own experiences as a First Nations woman growing up as Two-Spirit, one who came out in the RCMP in 1990 and identified as lesbian at the time, and then later as transgendered. My life experiences told me that the world can be a very unkind and unwelcoming place. At times, I didn't know how to feel. I only knew things were changing quickly and that my life would never be the same. Birth and rebirth. This is a photo of my daughter's birth at home, August 22nd, 2015. The picture shows Pomegranate midwife Kat Montgomery examining Nika shortly after her speedy arrival into the world after a 2-hour, 40-minute labor. 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'll be ever grateful for Kat and her team who gave my wife and I the much-needed confidence and support we needed. I suppose this was the beginning of where things started to change for me and how I felt towards the idea of having a child of my own, of being a parent and joining what I thought was going to be the institution of heteronormative heaven. However, right from the start, Pomegranate was queer-friendly, and my being a two-spirit trans man was never an issue. My fears and discomfort around old ideas of family, and especially being around children, were usually hurtful and cruel. But somehow, this journey to Nika's birth slowly began to change things for me in an entirely unexpected way. Acceptance around our wishes and visions of parenthood instead of rejection. Inclusion and welcoming as a family. And affirmation and celebration. Somewhere along the way, I began to feel part of. Nika's arrival was not only a birth, but a rebirth for me. I believe it's entirely possible for me to be part of this life experience in a completely different way than I've ever known, one that is life-giving.
So, there we go. Hello. So we're now doing participatory data analysis of our photos and stories. These are emerging themes that are specific to the photos and the stories from Two-Spirit and Indigenous trans co-researchers. So health and healing, isms and phobias, transphobia, homophobia, I can't even say the word, colonialism, racism, sexism, heteronormative, and cis-normative, Resilience, family, laughter, culture, comfort, place of safety, pain, no safe place. Say your truth without fear. Once we were honored by our people, we will be again. Never be ashamed of who you are. Perseverance, courage, and new beginnings.
So next steps in the research is to continue the participatory data analysis with 6 other researchers, to have a t-shirt fundraiser, which will be available online and in person. Are these the t-shirts that people are wearing?
T-shirts.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. Queer and Trans Open Mic Night, March 16th, which is what, next Wednesday? Next Wednesday. At Heartwood Cafe, which is a fundraiser to help send 4 other co-researchers to present the research at Moving Trans History Forward conference at UVic next week. Another thing is planning a large photo exhibit in Vancouver with all co-researchers sharing many or possibly all of their photos. And you guys took, what, 10 each?
That's correct.
Cool.
To add to that, we're putting an application to the Queer Arts Festival the end of June, so we're not sure where that's at yet. So keep your eyes open, because that's where they'll be all, I hope they take our project in.
Another thing is writing and publishing, journal articles, blogs, etc. Possibly other forms of social action, such as sharing the results of the research with the Vancouver Parks Board to support them in their trans and gender variant inclusion strategy, and possibly also with the City of Vancouver on their trans inclusion policy work, as well as other conferences and presentations. So this is a list of other readings that might be of interest. The last article on the list is particularly important because it talks about barriers to well-being for Aboriginal and gender diverse folks. So I don't know if anyone wants to camera phone that if they're interested. Otherwise, you can always come up here and check in later. And also something else to notice about that last one is that Liz James from the project, one of the co-researchers that wasn't able to make it tonight, was also involved with that last one with the TransPulse project in Ontario. Also, we just want to acknowledge and thank all of those who have been involved in the project so far. This shows the names and organizations involved in the initial advisory group, as well as the current advisory group and current list of co-researchers. And then we also want to acknowledge the following supports for the project. So again, the project is funded through the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research and is based at Simon Fraser University in the Faculty of Health Sciences. And the following organizations and individuals provided in-kind donations in support of the project, such as free meeting space, discounted cameras, photography training, design skills, and catering. All right, and so I think we're on to questions. I'm still here for a little while, so I'm happy to, oh yeah, hand you over the mic, sure. There you go.
We'll have a question and answer period, and I'll pass the mic around. Is this thing on, or? Oh, you got one? Oh, okay, right on.
Hey everybody. I had a question about, Bon, you were talking a little bit about your experience going to Sweat Lodge and having the 2 lodges separate. We read an article in our class. I'm here with my class tonight. We read an article, well, we didn't read it in the class, but we read it outside of the class, and we're talking about this sort of the idea of skirt shaming, that idea that, you know, people forced to wear a skirt in ceremony, and how that can be really, if you're Two-Spirit or gender diverse, it can be really invalidating and upsetting for folks. I wonder if folks would speak to that a little bit and see if, is it changing at any point? I know there's...
Yes, it is changing. It depends where you go. Oh my, this is a big topic here. All I can say is my process through the time, because I was at ceremony so many years. I'm back in Vancouver. People got to know me. I showed up. I go to a friendship center, so people were getting to know me. I'm not a stranger. I show up and I wear my shorts, and they go, "Oh," then they just let me in the lodge now. And there's a great community here because I know there's two spirits in some of the ceremonies in Vancouver because we're in different circles, a bunch of us, different ones. And I also know that my time, like in North Van, luckily, you know, I was sweating another two-spirit circle, and I joined a friend, who wasn't a friend then, a Salish man from Haida Gwaii, Hoya Baker, and I sweat with him and his friends and family, and I became part of their group. I was the only two-spirit one there. At the beginning, he would have me on the women's side of the lodge, and this was 4 or 5 years ago, but I still came in my shorts. And he didn't never say anything about it. And then what's happened through the time now, he said, you know, this person needs to have a lodge of their own. And luckily, I was gifted with a space for a lodge. And that's very honoring from the Salish people to be on their land. And I get to run a lodge for us. Nowadays, what happened through that year, his son was they do initiation for the boys. He asked to use my sweat lodge so his son could fast. And I said, yes, of course. So his son and his friends fasted in my lodge, and they had a ceremony when it was over. I was there, part of it. It's really great because they see me now as us two-spirit, and they welcome me there with the boys, actually, that boy. And now, that day, I mean, he says, now, I go in the lodge, and he just says, you sit I go on the men's side now, or I sit at the back in the middle. Or sometimes I go on the female side, because some of the lodges, they have the men's side and the women's side. My lodge doesn't have that. We're all together. So that's when they know me, right? But when I go to another lodge, they don't know me, so right away I go on the women's side. And I just do that because I want to go and pray there so much. But they're getting to know me now, so it's okay. In a ceremony, they'll say, you need a skirt. And I kind of go, well, or they say, you need a skirt, and I says, well, I don't need one anymore. Or that's not for me. Or they says, do you have a skirt? I go, no. Are you looking for one? So now I don't get angry. I get creative in my response, and I take my space, but it's not an angry response anymore. It's like, this is who I am, and I have a right. It's not like it's more like, I have that space, and they see that. And that doesn't really get to me so much anymore. But still it happens, you know, it depends on who's leading the ceremonies or if they're awareness, and they need education too. And I don't think people are doing it out of shaming. It's more about, even though it feels like shaming to us, I think they're doing it out of knowing what they've been taught. And I think that colonialism did that skirt thing more. Because I think everybody rocked how we were, and that got so mixed up and ingrained that that's what happens, and they don't really know. So I don't get so angry anymore. I just go, well, they don't know. So who's going to teach them? So we need to teach, or I have to have the courage to bring them tobacco and say, where you want to put the rest of my brothers and sisters who can't speak up, and especially the little kids I'm thinking about. You know, I go to a Sun Dance, and they have the men's gifts and the women's gifts, and I was at one, and I was like, well, I don't want this, nail polish. And so I give it to someone beside me, the gift. You know, I pass it on. So again, it's that segregation of, why don't you just give gifts anywhere? Because when I was a little kid, I probably wouldn't want some of the things they gave me because I liked the other kind of toys. So that happens still. So. Or else you're at a spirit pipe ceremony, and the woman is loading her pipe, and she's got a daughter there, and she tells her to sit a certain way, and she has her skirt dress on. And all I could think about, if I was a little kid, a little girl, boy, I would be really upset because I probably wouldn't want to have that skirt on. But you would do it because you have to, because you're elder and you have to do it, and you don't really have a voice yet. So that's the young people I'm kind of like, want them to be able to dance who they are, and without having to adjust their clothing because they want to be part of a ceremony.
For me, it's been a process. My first sweat was in 1983 in West Bank First Nation when I met my Okanagan dad, Glenn, and they sent me off to the sweat. It was actually a medicine man by the name of Henry Tyler, who is a Arapaho, and so all these different nations have different teachings around sweats, right? And sweat lodges, and what we call in Elks is grandmother Coulson, is female sweat lodge. there's different teachings around that depending, and it goes from tribe to tribe. And I've heard so many different types of teaching around women and skirts, and depends where you are and who you're with. Okanagan people sweat differently than Nehiyaw or my people. So it is changing. I do remember over the years having to be in ceremonies and being told to wear a skirt or a dress. If I remember correctly, though, in 1983, when I got invited to that first sweat, because I didn't have a skirt, I wore shorts. I never owned skirts or dresses, so I never really did. Probably very rarely. I was doing up in Alkali Lake, which is Secwepemc territory, in Esket. And we were up the mountain doing Vision Quest with the village people, the people up in Esket. And I was wearing some sort of long, covered, like a gown almost, I guess. And that would have been the last time. And at the time, I wasn't identifying as trans or male. So if I remember correctly, that would have been about 7 to 8 years ago. And we went up the mountain for 4 days. But that would have been the last time. Also, when I was sweating with Nerkushchan Glenn at his place in Kermias, down in Chopaka, south of Kermias, actually Smilkameen, way out in the land. They lived out like 8 miles way out with nobody. And Okanagans or Silks people have family sweats. So you could go in there with no clothes, and I would. And we would sweat as family, or I could sweat as individual. So in Selk's culture, that's how you could do that. There's medicine sweats, there's family sweats, there's cultural like other sweats, right, with communities. So there's different types. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I just want to add to, yes, we're changing, we're being very diverse. I remember about 8 years ago, the hoop dancers just used to be for males and only for males. That's changing. We've seen Two-Spirit women do the hoop dancing, so it's slowly changing. Yeah, that's all I want to add.
Thank you for sharing with everyone here. I was wondering what your experience has been talking to children about being Two-Spirit, and especially when you introduce yourself, and if your approach to that is different than talking with adults.
I could tell you an experience I had. I haven't been around a lot for children, like, see me as Two-Spirit, but I know they're watching me because I went to that one Cree Sun Dance about 5 years ago, and beside us, it wasn't a child, it was a youth, actually, a girl, boy, I will say she was, but I can't speak for her. And we were camped right next door, and they told you, again, to put the skirt on and run around, be at the Sundance in the skirt. Well, oh my God, I kept forgetting it in the morning and tripping on it. Like I was stressed out because I had to get up in the morning, put this thing on, so just I could walk around the land of the Sundance. Well, they don't know how stressed that was for me. That's not normal for me to get out of bed and look for a skirt. It isn't, so it bothered me, and then I'd forget the little cloth they gave me. And then at one point, I just didn't wear it anymore. And I walked around the camp without it in my pants, and when I get to the Sundance Circle, I threw the little shawl around me. But at one point, there was that person camped next to us, and they started not wearing their skirt either. I started seeing them walking around without it. So that showed me they were watching me and my friends, and I was with the elders. We were a mixed camp. We weren't all Two-Spirit. It was just me and someone else, and the others was an elder and my friends, right? And that was an example of modeling that they were watching. I didn't even know they were watching. And right now, I don't know who's watching. I'm sure at that one Sundance that when I was at a few years ago, I got to be at that Sundance in my pants. And they, oh my God, I went to the arbor and someone told me, you go. I know they were shuffling around looking at me, so I was like moving so they wouldn't come to me, so they'd have to kind of catch me, and because I was hiding, right? But eventually someone came, you got to go put a skirt on. I went, and I left, right? And I went to the river and someone told me again, and this elder I says, well, no, I don't have to. And I still walked there in my pants. And then this other little elder came to me and told me that, oh, we just talked about you. I'm going, oh, yeah? And she said that we had a mini meeting because she was the elder of the camp. And she says, I told them, you two spirits are very powerful. And it's okay that they wear their pants. And it's hard because some of my sisters, brothers, I have a two-spirit friend who doesn't mind wearing a skirt, and she's kind of male, and she doesn't mind wearing a skirt. So that's where people get mixed up in the community. Like, she's wearing one, how come you? And she's two-spirited. So that's where the definition gets blurry. And they don't know what to do with us sometimes. They don't. So they actually need some of us or some others to model that, because we're very diverse in that way in our presentation. And I was the only one at that Sundance that had shorts on. Like, I had the pants on along with the men. And I'm pretty sure their kids were noticing that, because I think I was the only one. And that felt so empowering, because and even when we got the healing round, I cried so much in the arbor because they made room for me there. And that's what I mean by individual. It takes a lot of persistence and courage. And every time I go to ceremony, I go, am I going to this? I call them straight ones ceremonies. Am I going to go? Because when I go there, I got to deal with the skirt thing again. Am I tired? I got rough things happening in my life. I want to go for healing. I don't want to have to figure out what clothes to put on top of it. And that I won't go sometimes because I don't feel strong enough. So that's what I have to go through every time I go to something. And for any of you that make these ads for in our community that say this ceremony's on and they put the woman's wear a skirt at the ceremony, I see that and that bothers me again, you know. And I get a little angry because I got to go through this again. But I still show up. But again, I'm thinking about the others, like you said, the children who see that. So I think all three of us, I know that, and the others are modeling in our community. The more we're at the powwows, the more we're at Friendship Center, or wherever we are, we gather, the more they see us, then the ones that are like us can nudge their little ways in, right?
Just to add to that, when I talk to youth and children, I say, you know, we're not judgmental. You are what you are. And if you want to be two-spirited, then that's fine. But, you know, you don't have to label yourself either. So it's we're trying to bring along the next generation and hopefully the next generation after that to be open and have the freedom to do what they want when they want.
The other thing is your family or adopted families or people I've worked for over the years know I'm two-spirit. It was no big surprise when I worked with Solitude and Squamish Nation, certainly West Bank First Nation as well, and within that Elks territory, everyone knows I'm two-spirit, and oh, that's Chase. And I usually go to places as in the slides where it's family or it's like home territory or extended family or something. So everybody pretty well knows who you are. And it's a family that breaks that sometimes. If there's questions around it, they'll explain on your behalf as well. And I haven't really had to run around telling people I'm two-spirit. I think when people look at me, it's kind of obvious. So it doesn't need a big explanation. But if there is any gender confusion on how one wants to be addressed, there's families pretty good with that too. And they explain ahead of you. I don't spend a lot of time going. I'm kind of like Bon here that I'm not really super outgoing. I don't go to strange places or whatever. I'm originally from Alberta. I just got back from Calgary yesterday. So I move around certain territories with people that are family and or extended family. I'm not really going out to newer places and having to deal with that. And I guess that's part of being two-spirit or trans is we have to take those things into consideration. We're always having to deal with that. And that'll tell us and dictate where we go and who we spend our time with and where we travel, whether it's a safe place or not, and whether we're going to be respected or not. So we take those things into consideration. Thanks.
Just to add a little bit to that, I know a lot of our communities within BC are very accepting. Our elders are learning. They don't care what we are. Our youth are understanding. It's like, great, we got, our elders, well, they call me an elder, and that are leading the way and paving that road, so I don't have those struggles as I get a little bit older, and the communities are understanding. Just to tell you a little story. I was up in Bonaparte, Indian, just outside of Cache Creek, and I was sitting around with a bunch of women. We were doing a workshop, and we were having a circle, and they were all, I guess, heterosexual women, and there was me, the two-spirited man. And after that, we were ready to leave. I was gifted an eagle feather because I told my story. I lost my husband about 4 years ago, and I am two-spirited, and they're just like, embrace that. It's like, these people don't know who I am in this community. So it's, I just flew in from Prince George doing some work up there, and everybody knows I'm two-spirited. It's okay. It's not what we are. It's how we, how we deal with people, how we honor them, how we bring them into where we're at. So, I think those days of being judgmental, yes, there are people out there that are very judgmental, but, we can't change everybody's views. So that's all I want to add.
So much, everyone, for coming out, and thank you so much to all the co-researchers on the project. It's been absolutely amazing just to be involved in these incredibly powerful photos, just really, really moving photos. So thank you so much for all your work, and thank you so much for your support.
Okay, thank you very much for our panelists. I was just thinking about this when I was listening to you all. There's an interesting story I came across when I was reading David Thompson's narrative, and he introduces this person whose name was Gukumini Puka, and she was a Tunaha warrior. Her name translates as Gone to the Spirits, and when he first met her, she was living in a Tunaha village, and she was having trouble finding a husband because, as he described her, she was a strapping lass, and she was a tall woman, and she eventually married a Canadian, and in those days a Canadian was Francophone descendants of the colonists of New France, and so she married this Canadian and went off and lived with him, and then a few years after, she broke up that relationship. And when she went back to her community, she introduced herself as a man and said that the white people had taken her sex away. And so she'd gone on a spirit quest, and the spirits had told her to live as a man. And she became very well known as a warrior, and she was involved in many battles. And ultimately, she was killed by Blackfoot in a battle with Blackfoot. And in the Blackfoot tradition, when you killed an enemy and you took their scalp, it was to send that person to the spirit world to be a slave of your ancestors. And so if you knew a warrior who you'd fought many times and had distinguished themselves in war, a way to honor them was not to scalp them. And so when Gukumini Puka was killed in battle with the Blackfoot, they didn't scalp her. And so she was allowed to go to the spirit world as a free person. So have a good evening, and thank you for attending.